Hi, I'm Chris McCoy, and this is the Memphis Flyer podcast, or as we like to call it, the Michael Donahue Show. We're here with Michael Donahue, the great columnist, and who gets all the clicks
Well,
for
not all of them.
for the Flyer, and he has the cover story this week. Memphis Flyer. It's about Ann Barnes, who is well. You tell him. Why don't you tell him who Ann Barnes is?
Okay, she's a caterer in Memphis, but she's a caterer. Well, she's always been a caterer, but she owned some restaurants for a while called Just for Lunch. I think they had three different locations. But I did an interview with her in the Flyer, and we've been old friends for a long time, and she's a fabulous cook. But during the interview, the first interview for the Flyer, for just my food column, she just started mentioning people she'd cooked for. And she kept mentioning people she cooked for, and it was ambassadors, royalty, movie stars, musicians. I mean, it was staggering. At five presidents. So I said, Anne, wait a minute. So you've reached the cover story,
You
category.
have cover
So I
story
know
gravitas now.
exactly. So I said, we're going to have to do a separate story on, because we already had the other one booked. In fact, I was trying to get her to let's just save this and do one big cover story. And she said, well, no, I'd really like to get this in. I've been telling everybody it's going to be in the Flyer. So we waited. I mean, we ran that one. And then I went back and did an interview just on the celebrities. And I think everybody's going to like it. This isn't a cooking column. It's about people she's cooked for. And some of the stories are just great, like Henry Kissinger, the just things like that. Like he showed up at a party, and first thing he did was take his shoes off just to relax, and then he took the tops off of the sandwiches on the buffet so he could see what was in them. And it's just the way she tells it, and it's just funny. But it's everybody from. She kept calling me back to tell me, wait, I forgot to tell you about Eudora Welty, or in Five Presidents, Clinton was, I think, her favorite. And it's just a good read and very, very fun to write. And it was one of those stories that just kept going. I mean, she's probably got 100 more stories. We'll run another story next year, maybe.
Yeah, Ann Barnes Part Two.
But she's still going strong. She's been in the business for a long time, but now she's got a new catering company called Corinne's. I think Corinne's Very Fine Catering or some fine foods, but it's named after her mom, and she's from Little Rock, and I get a little bit of her bio in there too, but I'm real proud of it. So I think you'll like this.
Yeah, it's a great story. I've read it. I read it yesterday morning, and like all of your personality profiles are fantastic. You can really get to the core of people, which I think is part of what we do when we try to do a personality profile, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
I have one thing in common with Ann Barnes. I've catered a president
Who?
before, Gerald Ford.
Oh,
I spent a winter in Vail, Colorado, working at this wine and cheese shop, and we did catering,
wow.
and we catered Gerald Ford's Christmas dinner, and I didn't meet him or anything. I just carried in the chafing dishes, and
So
then I
that's
cleaned up
very
afterwards.
cool. Well, my story on Gerald Ford isn't as nice.
Oh, good.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
that's the kind we
it
like.
was well, no, it was not. It's not bad, but he was here for the golf tournament back, the St. Jude tournament, if I recall, and it was sort of set up. I was covering the tournament or the parties involved, and this was old commercial appeal days, and so suddenly I'm face to face with Gerald Ford, and I didn't know what to ask him. I mean, I really didn't keep up with Gerald Ford's political career, back then, and so all I could remember was that he had one of his kids was in a soap opera, and so the question went sort of like this: well, so how's your is it your son, right, who's in a soap opera? What's his name? What's the soap opera? And I mean, I can still sort of see his face. It's not alarm, but kind of like, this isn't what I normally get asked. And it's usually better, you know, delivered. And then when I finished, and was walking away, his assistant went, "Next time you interview the president, make sure you do your homework." And I'll never ever forget that. But it was, I don't even, I'm sure part of it got in my story, but that was but I did get to meet Clinton also, who was
Mm-hmm.
charming.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember not Clinton, but the people that were kind of doing the PR for the party, I interviewed him, and that was all set up to do an interview for my column. But, excuse me, but I also, when I finished, he was giving a speech at the party. It was a private party, and I taped the speech because I thought, well, all right, I'll throw some of that in.
Mm-hmm.
And this woman that was, I guess, in charge of PR or whatever, she said, "You're going to have to give me that tape." And I said, "My interview is on that tape, and I'm not giving you the tape." And finally, we worked it out. So I said, "Well, I'll just transcribe my interview, and you can have the president's interview." But then, of course, when I get back to the newspaper, they go, "You're never supposed to turn in your tape. You just leave. You just leave. Don't ever turn in your tape."
No.
And so I learned that lesson too. So
Yeah.
I've learned a lot from working with presidents. But I think those were the only two. But that was, that's
Did
kind of daunting.
I've asked you this before in another context, but I like this question. So you covered parties for a long time.
40 years.
40 years. The
Almost 40
social,
plus.
social scene. So so you do like a couple parties a weekend probably at this point?
Yeah, it's something like that. And now I pretty much concentrate on the best event of the week because it goes in the "We Saw You" column in the Flyer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, we have room for one big party. So it's now it's more Flyer centric, I would think. So it's more events and, still fundraisers and things, but things that our readers would be more interested in taking
So
pictures of.
so what makes a good party in your
Well,
opinion?
it's interesting. It really is the people, and it's to me, it's like when you're meeting new people or you're seeing people you really like, and they're there. I mean, that's the 75% of it, um, and just the vibe. I mean, some parties just have that vibe. Like it could be in a weird space, an unusual space, or the food, but the vibe usually is all of that combined. Like the people um, and if I think hard, I can think some of those. But it really doesn't get old. I mean, it's been 50 years, and I'll condense this real quick. But how I got into it was I was at the Memphis Press Scimitar, my first newspaper, and they had like some women covering society, and that was the parties, and things like that. But there was a big fundraiser every year for the Metropolitan Opera used to come to town, and I guess it was a fundraiser, but it was a big party they had at Justine's, the old restaurant, and nobody was there to cover it. So the editors said, "Michael Donahue, you've got to go cover this party." And I'm like, "Oh, everybody's going to make fun of me. No, don't make me go." And so, but it was like, "You better go." This was the big editor, Milton Britton. So I went and I got a date, and she and I went, and I literally winged it. But it was like a perfect story to do your first party because at the opera, it was Rudolph. Uh, uh, what's his name? The opera singer. Ah,
Valentino? No, that's
no, not Rudolph Valentino. No, I don't go back that far.
It's the first thing that popped in my head.
I mean, well, whatever. So this is tearing up my story, but anyway, he was the performer, and then I covered the dinner and just kind of wrote about what I saw, and it wasn't like a conventional party column. It was like, what they served and incidents that happened, um, and then when I turned it in, my editor, the big editor, Milton Britton, said, "Well, you have to start writing parties from now on." And it was like, I sort of shot myself in my leg. But it's been great because it's a great way to meet people and get other stories. And at some point, I'm going to remember the opera singer who I'm having a mind blank.
Pavarotti?
Yes, it was
Pavarotti.
Pavarotti. Yes.
Yeah.
because my memory of him was he was talking to Dayton Smith, the owner, one of the owners of Justine, and I said when he walked away, I said, Dayton, what was he talking about? And he said he wanted a recipe for something we make. So I was following Pavarotti out the door. He was waiting to go down to his cab, and he was walking towards it. And I said, Mr. Pavarotti, can I talk to you for a bit? I'm with the press scimitar. And he turned his back and just went like this all the way down the steps and never turned around and never answered it. It was just, but it was cool, and it was just a perfect party to start 50 years worth. And
Well, okay, here's the other half of that question. What's a vibe killer? What will destroy a party or make a bad party?
when, well, I hate to say this, and parties have evolved, but if a party uses the same formula and you can tell that it's the same formula, and for years and years and years, and I think they've got away from it pretty much, but it used to always be cocktails, then you'd go into dinner, then they'd have a band from somewhere. I mean, some kind of entertainment.
Hmm.
And there used to be like a company that would bring in these people. And, it was great people. I got to see Burt Bacharach and uh, just all kinds of people. But then they would do, after that, it would be coffee and laces in another part of like at the Peabodys.
Hmm.
But it was always the same thing. But it got to the point where it was it was a vibe killer if it was you felt like you've done it 3 million times.
Hmm.
And that could be just a vibe killer for me, because a lot of these guests at this party probably didn't go to 6 more that night that were similar.
Hmm.
But back in the day, I mean, I would cover 6 parties or more a night. I'd start at the Hilton and end downtown, and just all the parties in between. And it was the old, just shoot and leave. Well, I'd stay a while, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
but
Do people party less now, you think?
I think it's back now, just the way it was before the pandemic. I mean, after the pandemic, no, people weren't partying, and it was
Yeah.
and even fundraisers, it took a while to get back, but now, I mean, it's, I'm looking at the festivals and things that we had a list in the flyer, and there's something all the time, and there's fundraisers. I've been able to find something every week for We Saw You since we started putting them in the paper and having one a week, 1 or 2 a week. So
Hmm.
I think the parties are back, and people are out
Yeah,
doing, which is good.
Yeah.
For me.
yeah.
I know. It's like I can still
Good for the beat.
hone my craft for the beat.
Well, okay. So you also do a food column. And, what have you written about recently that's fun to you?
Well, the great one to me, I mean, it's and as you know, in our job, it's if you get a great interview, it's like somebody giving you $1 million. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, I mean, we get excited. Like if you sit down with somebody and they just start talking, and their quotes are great and their stories are crazy, but this guy Lewis Conley, who owns Lewis Conley's bar over here on Cleveland, he texted me and said, I bought another bar in Millington, near Millington, and it's on Highway 51. So I instantly started thinking about all those, bars. They called them rough bars. Like one was called Mugs, and just different ones, and it was
Yeah.
like scary
Yes.
bars.
Mugs.
And
I
Mugs.
remember being.
Did you go to Mugs?
No, I remember being younger than I am now and naive, and somebody told me, "Do not go to Mugs."
Yeah, I know. It's like
Whatever
I
you
never
do.
went to Mugs, but when I was at the commercial, it may have been the press scimitar. We had a column called, and I did that for a while, to Nightlife or something like that. And I decided I want to do one of those tough bars. So there was a bar in Fraser called Miller's Cave. Do you remember that?
I remember hearing about it. Yeah.
And that was
Don't hang out in
notorious.
Fraser much, me. But
No. Well, I went, and so again, I was going to have a date. She was going to go with me, and we were going to go, um, and it snowed, and she couldn't go. Something happened. She couldn't go. So I went, great. I'm going all by myself to Miller's Cave, and we'll see what happened. Because it was really, it was one of the tough bars. It's scary, there were stories. I don't know if it was true or not, of people getting shot. And so I walk in, and it couldn't have been more fun. I mean, the owners they call them the Miller brothers. I don't know if one is still alive, but they were performers as well in their own band that they played at Miller's Cave. And just the stories and the pictures. I remember the bartender was just like all hair, kind of like William Lee Golden and the Oak Ridge Boys, but with the long beard, and just everything turned out great.
Mm.
And then Frederick Keppel, who was our restaurant reviewer at the Commercial Appeal, he did a story called Tough Bars. It was either, I guess it was either Tough Bars or Rough Bars. But he went to all of those. He went to Muggs, if I recall, but all these bars. But anyway, and it was a great story. So I got all excited when he started talking about this bar, which had been there for a while, Kickstart Bar and Grill. So just the stories were just wonderful. It was like one guy, his nickname, they all go by their nicknames, and his was Big Head. And just stories about, like how Big Head, and I talked to Big Head, and I asked him if he didn't mind if I used this in the story. But like if Big Head, partied a little bit too much, he'd call his son, and his son had a tow truck service or a tow truck, and would come down and pick up his dad and put his dad in the cab, and then take the tow truck and tow the truck home, and just take them all home at the same time. And just, it was like, this great story. The guy's name is Big Head. And another one was, I think, Big Head Bobby or Big Bobby. So I went there, and the place looks just wonderful. I mean, it's just right out of a movie set. Like the first thing you notice outside was this 15-foot concrete Budweiser glass, Miller High Life, and painted orange and yellow, and it just, but read that story. If you go back, I'm proud of that. So that's one of the ones that gets me real excited.
Yeah, that's on MemphisFlyer.com right now. I just saw it this morning on the site, so you can go check it out. And Michael, this has been awesome as usual.
Thank you.
I don't know if, I'm sure that our esteemed listening audience knows that you're a musician, right?
Well, I play the piano. I've been doing that since I was a teenager at parties and things, and I still do that. That's like, moonlighting job or whatever. But yeah, and I fell in love with this piano here. Is it Archer Studio?
We're Archer Studio now. It's where we're at. That's where we do our recording, and there is a fantastic. Is that a baby grand? That's what that is, right?
I think it's a parlor grand.
Parlor
grand.
grand.
It's
okay.
Longer, but this belonged to Charlie Wood, and it's just, I just couldn't resist it. So Daniel let me play, and I started playing and playing and playing, and then I realized, I mean, it's one of the most perfect pianos I've ever played, and I'm not kidding. But then I realized shortly before you came in that I didn't even have the top up. So I'm playing this muted, basically piano, but you can't tell it at all. So
yeah. Well, will you play something for us?
why, yes.
All right.
I thought you'd never ask.
This is the Memphis Flyer podcast. I'm Chris McCoy. Michael Donahue is going to play us out. We'll see you here next week. Okay.